left. It features the longest straight on the entire calendar between turns 11 and 12, 60 metres longer than the straight in Mugello. You weave your way through that tricky first sector, very physically demanding on the upper body. Good overtaking hot spot at the end of that 350km straight into turn 12, and then it was turn 18 in sector 4 yesterday where Marc Marquez had a big scare on his way to victory in the sprint. Overtaking hot spots, plenty of them into turns 1, 11, 12, 15 and into the final quarter of turn 20. This was Marc Marquez making his move through on Jorge Martin here 1 year ago in 2:12. So it turned into another super Saturday for Marc Marquez in the MotoGP World Championship as he made a dream launch from pole in the 10-lap Tissot sprint. But what an aggressive move early on by his teammate Pecco Bagnaia, who got a great launch and led into the first corner, led again through turn 3, but Marquez hit the front on an epic, a nail-biting first lap in the sprint. What a move that was, what a moment for Marquez out of the seat through turn 18. Seconds later, he retakes the lead from Alex Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia, and he stays perfect so far in 2025. 3 pole positions, 3 sprint wins, and now Marc Marquez going for gold once again here in COTA. 8 pole positions he has taken at a circuit which he's had a love affair with ever since he first cut a lap here back in 2013, when victory that weekend saw him become the youngest ever MotoGP race winner. Well, he's going in search now of his 8th victory here in the MotoGP World Championship. 19 points clear. The 93 is of his younger brother Alex Marquez. 2025, the story of MotoGP this year, has very much been about the Marquez brothers, as they, so far this season, have finished first and second in every sprint and Grand Prix we have so far had. Live pictures coming to you from the outskirts of the music capital of the world in downtown Austin. It's cloudy but thankfully dry. If you were with us a few moments ago for the Moto2 race, no spoilers here in the commentary box, but there was rain that started to fall shortly before the start of that 16-lap battle. There was a clear dry line emerging towards the end of the Moto2 race, and what are we, about 40 minutes away from the start of MotoGP, over 20 laps. And if there is no further intervention from the clouds, well, it should be a straight, slick tyre shootout between the world's fastest riders at the Horsepower Rodeo. As always, it's Matt Burton, Lewis Sotheby in the commentary box, talking you through all the action and the build-up to the 20-lap Red Bull Grand Prix of the Americas. Jack Appleyard down in pit lane, and understandably so, there are some rather apprehensive and pensive faces in the factory Ducati garage. I wonder what the weather forecasts are saying for potential lights out. What are the conditions going to be at around 2 p.m. local time here in Texas? You can still see there off in the distance a few umbrellas. I don't know if they're just protecting themselves from some rain that may still be falling, maybe just light drizzle now. But will it be the rain that finally halts Marc Marquez's stunning early charge in 2025? He was awesome in the sprint yesterday. This was him firing away from that record-breaking 8th pole position at the start of the 10-lap sprint yesterday. Keep an eye on Pecco Bagnaia, his factory Ducati teammate, on the right-hand side of your screens. What a launch away it was on the GP25 for the Italian. Nudging on the inside of Marquez through that very tight first corner. Shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow go the Marquez brothers, who continue their amazing start. And then the big scare, almost launching himself into orbit through turn 18, was Marc Marquez. And then at the very next corner, did he need 4 or 5 corners to get his composure back, to get himself back in the groove? Of course he didn't. This is the 8-time world champion we're talking about. Marc Marquez quickly taking back control of the sprint, and he took the checkered flag nearly 0.8 of a second headed brother Alex. These were very special and emotional scenes post-sprint. What a moment to cherish and never forget moment for that young Marc Marquez fan. But Marquez will tell you, well, it's only half the job completed yet. Pole is great. Another nice new shiny Tissot watch is great. 12 points for yet another sprint victory, his fourth in the sprint era in MotoGP. But today is where he really wants to cash in. And you know, having won 7 times previously here in COTA, he wants the crown back, Lewis. He wants the throne back, and he wants to be crowned once again the king of COTA.
Yeah, Marc Marquez usually has just taken victory without much of a sweat at all over the years. He might be sweating a little bit though, given the circumstances that surround us as we get ready for this 20-lap Grand Prix of the Americas. Certainly a racetrack that's dry on the racing line, but you wouldn't say it's dry everywhere. This was the first lap of the sprint yesterday in the battle between the VR46 duo, Morbidelli versus Di Giannantonio, and it's that Fabio Di Giannantonio was particularly unhappy with, and this was the post-race exchange of hand gestures between the VR46 teammates. Fabio Di Giannantonio feels that cost him a shot at maybe challenging Pecco Bagnaia for the sprint podium. Frankie Morbidelli says, hey, it was just hard racing. Perhaps not the kind of overtake you would expect from your teammate. That was certainly the opinion of Fabio Di Giannantonio.
Yeah, that was a very upset and angry Fabio Di Giannantonio, exiting quickly out the back of the VR46 racing garage. Not entertaining any kind of peace talks, was he, there, between himself and Frankie Morbidelli. Great to see the Valentino Rossi project sporting a very nice American NFL Stars and Stripes theme livery for this Grand Prix. Fourth, Di Giannantonio was at the checker flag, his best sprint result actually since Qatar 2023. He felt though that clearly he had a podium potential had it not been for that early battle with his teammate Frankie Morbidelli. Well, it was bad vibrations, not good vibrations for Pedro Acosta and the other KTM riders. Acosta dropped back from 4th to 7th, and oh, how much he would be wishing to be out there right now, getting himself ready for this Austin Grand Prix. We are still sadly missing on track right now reigning world champion Jorge Martin. You can see that number 1 there on the outside of the factory Aprilia garage. Hopefully, fingers crossed for Aprilia and for Jorge Martin and for MotoGP fans all around the world. We will see finally, for the first time in 2025, the number 1 in competitive MotoGP action when we go to Qatar, the Lusail International Circuit, in 2 weeks' time. That is Martin's target comeback date. That's why he's made the long trip across the Atlantic from Europe to Austin to spend some time with his Aprilia crew. Bit of a team building and team bonding exercise.
So some rain in the foreground there, falling in pit lane, because we are 35 minutes or so away from the start. Just what kind of bearing will the weather have? Well, storming through the field yesterday in the sprint was Pecco Bagnaia, who was on the pit wall side, which wasn't exactly the grippiest side if you asked Jack Miller yesterday, but Bagnaia storming into the lead. Marc Marquez is now back ahead, as you can see, but Bagnaia was able to strike back into turn 3. This was the second time that Marc Marquez had to regain the lead from his new teammate, and then on the way out of turn 18, after that big moment, he overtook for a third time. Finally had the sprint under control. A memorable first lap of the sprint, and were they the first signs of Pecco Bagnaia getting to something approaching his best again?
He'll certainly hope so. He was a close third there to the Marquez brothers, just as he was in both the sprint and the Grand Prix in Thailand, our season opener at the Chang International Circuit in Buriram. Marc Marquez yesterday becoming just the third rider to win 3 successive sprints, joining Bagnaia and Jorge Martin in that exclusive club. Ducati fans are out in force. He's got an army of support here, as the Marc Marquez. Great to see fans young and old experiencing one of the most spectacular racetracks on our Grand Prix calendar. So it's all eyes on the skies, particularly after we got the rainfall starting to fall just shortly before it was lights out for the Moto2 riders. Let's go down to Jack in pit lane for the latest weather update. Have you got some good news for us, Jack?
No, I don't, unfortunately. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, guys, but the rain has just started again. I've just managed to grab a very quick word then with Fonzie Nieto, who was doing some two-seater laps for a few of our VIPs here, and asked him what are track conditions like, and he said turn 1 is wet, the back straight in entirety is wet. Outside of that, the track is starting to dry. However, as I said, the rain, right on cue, has started falling again. It looks as though we're in a very similar position to what we had about half an hour out from the Moto2 race starting.
It's like nightmare, isn't it, this for the MotoGP teams and riders. Yeah, are we looking at a flag-to-flag scenario? After he led the morning walk session this morning, Marc Marquez didn't even bother with a flag-to-flag practice bike swap. You can see there then the rain starting to fall outside of the factory Ducati garage. That's been a sight we've seen throughout this weekend. There's barely space for Marquez to move as he tries to get in and out of the factory Ducati garage. But right now, it's all eyes on whether he can capture that 8th victory here at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. Unbeaten he was between 2013 and 2018. He only crashed out of the lead in 2019 with a massive lead because of an electronics glitch. Pole position in 8 of 11. He really does have a huge affection for COTA.
Of course, none of those previous 7 wins, though, were in these kind of conditions. And we have to remind you, Friday morning was full wet, and Marc Marquez crashed in quite a big way coming through turn 2 when he perhaps underestimated how much water there was and rode the racetrack, he said, as if it was dry. It certainly wasn't. It doesn't look as if the next time Marc Marquez goes through there, it is going to be dry either. This, I guess, is the element of unpredictability that 21 of the 22 riders were hoping for to try and deny Marc Marquez what we expect to be that 8th Austin victory.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about potentially a wet race or a race that's going to be run maybe in mixed conditions. Marquez is the maestro of flag-to-flag battles in the past, but your eyes are immediately drawn to the back of the 3rd row of the grid. Pramac Yamaha rider Jack Miller, who we know is brilliant in these conditions. I'm also drawn to the back of the 5th row, 15th place, Johann Zarco, who in the past, particularly when he was on the Ducati, showed great race pace when we've gone either wet to dry surface or vice versa, dry to wet. So there are a few surprise names that maybe could come into the equation here in COTA.
Someone who I think might also see this as a big opportunity is Pedro Acosta, who starts in the front of the 2nd row in 4th. His only wet weather experience in MotoGP was in Bahrain last year, and he finished on the podium.
Well, he's a MotoGP legend in this part of the world. He's a MotoGP wherever we go, isn't he? 4 times MotoGP runner-up back in the day. Still very much a part of the MotoGP family. Delighted to say Jack is joined by Randy Mamola down in pit lane.
Yeah, great to be joined by Randy. I'm sure there are plenty of days where Randy misses not being out there, but I imagine today's not one of them. This is a bit of a nightmare for these guys.
I can only imagine, and I know, even me sitting in having lunch, my stomach was cramping because I just know the tension that we have. Obviously, the eyes were on the Moto2 race because they judge everything off of that. And the guys that actually went out with slicks, as you saw, at the end of the race were 4 seconds faster. So this is what they're trying to judge that on. But at the same time as we're standing here, it starts sprinkling a little bit more. But what's it doing here compared to the 1 mile that's away from there? Anyway, is it going to be a different score in terms of who gets on the top 7 of the podium? Anything is possible. And unfortunately, those tracks can become slippery. They did have some data, obviously, on Friday, but everybody was looking for that race. I think this throws a great scramble to it. Maybe it goes the opposite way. They come in on rain tires and switch bikes, flag to flag.
Going to be a fascinating one. Thanks, Randy. Enjoy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks ever so much then to Randy Mamola. We're just getting some information in our commentary box here. The 20-lap Red Bull Grand Prix of the Americas in 2025 has been declared a wet race.
Which means that you don't have to wait for a white flag to change bikes. You can change at any stage if you do start on wets and it does dry up. But of course, the likelihood is that they're all going to go with wet weather tyres. It's certainly wetter than it was when the Moto2 race came to a close. They are going to make sure that they have bikes for both dry and for wet ready. And these sighting laps, which are going to get underway in 4.5 minutes' time, pit lane will be open at 35 minutes past the hour, just over 4 minutes from now, are going to be quite important for the riders to understand the conditions underneath them.
Just a quick rewind, a couple of days back to that full wet Friday morning session. It was Frankie Morbidelli that did lead the way on the VR46 Ducati. Well, the heavyweight Ducati management are here this weekend. There is Claudio Domenicali in the black leather jacket, of course, the head honcho at Ducati. Is he here to witness the Bologna factory extend their incredible winning run as they go in search of a 20th successive Grand Prix success, closing in rapidly on Honda's all-time lap record of 22, which has stood since the late 1990s. And is today, does potentially some iffy weather throw up a chance for Alex Marquez to finally put one over on his elder brother Mark? Well, we'll find out, won't we, in just under half an hour's time.
Well, Le Mans 2020, of course, saw Alex Marquez on the Honda. Back at that time, of course, he was a Repsol Honda rider, came through to the podium. It took another wet weather specialist in Danilo Petrucci to beat him on that afternoon. Not the kind of conditions many of us expected when we woke up this morning. We were expecting the best conditions of the weekend here in Austin. We do not have that. Confirmation of what I mentioned to you a moment ago, though. When the race is declared wet in MotoGP, you don't need to wait for a white flag to swap bikes. You can swap whenever you like.
This is a curveball in Kota, isn't it? The teams are getting themselves prepped and ready to go. Always butterflies in the stomach at this stage of a weekend, but even more so now as we get to see Frankie Morbidelli's NFL-inspired Pertamina Enduro VR46 racing livery. As you mentioned, it was on a Friday morning in pretty slippery conditions here in Austin that Morbidelli did lead the way. In fact, Frankie Morbidelli is the only rider so far this season who has topped a practice session other than Mark or Alex Marquez. Well, from one American Grand Prix legend to another, 1993 MotoGP World Champion Kevin Schwantz, who's joined us in the commentary box this weekend, giving us some of his unique insight into what's happening out on circuit. I wonder what Kevin's thinking about what's going to happen over the next hour or so. Let's get his thoughts with Jack in pit lane.
Kevin, this is a tricky one. Right now, what would you be doing?
I'm looking at the big American flag at the end, and the wind's blowing from left to right as we face up the front straightaway, which means any other moisture, most of the moisture is getting blocked by the building. So as wet as it looked down the back, everywhere from about turn 9 all the way back to turn 12, the guys on the slicks were nowhere in the Moto2 race, so it's got to be a tough choice. I don't think it's going to proper rain, but I don't think you can get away with slicks.
Now, it looks as though start on wets and then maybe see how the track conditions improve or deteriorate as you go along. I mean, normally in these conditions, Mark's the man, even though there's that level of risk much higher than I think what we all expected today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sunday we were all expecting kind of an overcast day, but not this thick, heavy mist and fog kind of thing we're experiencing. But, you know, it should make the racing a little bit more interesting. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Great, as always, to hear from a Texan racing god, Kevin Schwantz. As the riders get themselves in the zone and contemplate what conditions lie in store for them over the 20-lap Grand Prix of Kota. We just saw there two riders who, if it is mixed, a bit of a mixed bag, Johan Zarco and Jack Miller. We'll keep a close eye on those two. As Kevin Schwantz said, it would be a huge risk at this stage to start on those Michelin slick tyres, but we're still, what, a good 20 minutes or so before those calls are going to have to be made, maybe a little bit less, 15 minutes or so. Fabio Quartararo on the factory Yamaha, clear there that he was heading out for the formation lap on the Michelin rain tyres. Frankie Morbidelli, he's got the rain front. I feel that you have to come to the grid initially on those rain tyres. Was that a used slick?
A slick by Ayagura, who made a famous slick decision back in Japan last year and got away with it. Fabio Quartararo was wondering, hey, join me out on the racetrack, guys. It's fun out here. So we'll, I guess, find out. The riders will be understanding now in the next 3 or 4 minutes. I guess I can understand why someone might want to just go out there on slicks for the sighting lap. If it's raining, I guess you're going to know there's going to be water out there. I guess you're just going to want to find out how much. Ayagura definitely does have slicks on as he leaves the sighting lap. So if anyone's going to know whether this track is ready for slicks, it's going to be Ayagura. Although from the rain that we've seen falling, I don't suspect it is.
Yeah, a bit of an experiment then from the reigning Moto2 world champion. Rather nervy looking Ducati boss Gigi Dall'Igna as Marco Bezzecchi tiptoes his way through. It's Lorenzo Savadori, actually, the Jorge Martin injury replacement. Well, this is going to be some very, very big calls to be made in the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. Jack, what's the weather doing now?
Well, Kevin, absolutely bang on when he was speaking to us just a moment ago. I was speaking to him just in front of the Ducati box. Now that I've stepped out onto the grid and we don't have the canopy of the big pit box building, the rain is much more intense, much heavier than what I was feeling in pit lane. But right now, the conditions are quite a bit drier on track than what we had at the start of the Moto2 race, which makes this decision even more challenging. One thing for sure we'll have to look out for is the fact that throughout the entirety of that Moto2 race, the running, especially on the inside up towards turn 1, was not drying at all, which means they're going to have to be very, very careful off the start to make sure we don't have any kind of incidents.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Jack. I know you're going to need eyes in the back of your head on the grid to make sure you're all over what tyres these riders are going to start this 20-lap battle. Very late coming to the grid is Marc Marquez on the factory Ducati as he looks to maintain this incredible start to life in red. And of course, coming into this race day here on Sunday in Austin, had it been a full dry race, you really felt like there was only going to be a one outcome. A 7-1 on favourite Marc Marquez was to complete his 8th success here. Well, there's the Michelin slick tyre allocation, but are we going to be talking about their rain rubber throughout the next hour or so? Both the front and the rear, soft and medium in compounds. That will be the rain configuration as we follow Marc Marquez out of the factory Ducati garage. Pecco Bagnaia also coming to the grid late on for his sighting lap here.
So he's done a lap on the wet bike. He's now swapped over to do a lap on the dry bike. So Pecco Bagnaia sampling the conditions in either kind of configuration. He might need both in this Grand Prix coming up. In practice on Friday, that session started wet and finished dry. The crossover point where they moved from wets to slicks, they were doing sort of 212s, 213s when the session and ultimately became a dry one. Miller now swapping from dry to wet, so his bike that he pulls up onto the grid will presumably be the bike he's on now on wet weather tyres. Of course, dry lap times, the fastest lap times of the weekend have been in the 2:01s. But if they're doing 2:11s, 2:12s, 2:13s, then that's around the point where the track is starting to cross over from wet to dry.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I'm sure Jack's going to try and get some team reaction when they've spoken to their riders. There's an issue here, isn't there, for the 36 of Joan Mir. A bit of a frantic activity down outside the factory Honda garage. Oh, and Fabio Quartararo, he's crashed on the sighting lap. He's gone out on the slick bike, slick tyres. Well, and Fabio Quartararo, what a moment this is. He was one of the star performers in the sprint yesterday, having gone from 11th to 4th with a superb start. Quartararo then through the first sector with barely any speed or lean angle, and he has been caught cold in Kota. Quartararo then crashing on his second sighting lap.
And he's going to want to get that bike back because, of course, he wants to get back out of pit lane and take his place on the grid. They're readying his wet bike. Of course, if you do now have a flag-to-flag scenario, Fabio Quartararo might not have a second bike to swap to.
Well, that just shows how slippery and tricky it is on slick tyres around this circuit.
He's getting some help from Jack Miller now.
Jack Miller to the rescue,
Yes.
Of course it is. Who else could it be? But Miller Taxis back in full working order.
Some Yamaha teamwork going on there, isn't it, from Jack Miller? Always ready to lend a hand. Jack Miller, of course. Quartararo is due to start from the 4th row of the grid, 2 places behind Jack Miller. As it is, he might not start from the grid at all. Let's take a look at the grid then. Marc Marquez, Fabio Di Giannantonio, Alex Marquez is your front row. Of course, Di Giannantonio fell backwards on the first lap yesterday. Second row, we find Pedro Acosta in 4th place. We've skipped the 2nd and 3rd rows, but it's Acosta, Morbidelli, Bagnaia row 2, Marini, Mir, Miller row 3, Maverick Vinales scheduled to be alongside Fabio Quartararo in 11th, if he can get that bike back. Fermin Aldeguer is 12th on the grid. On row 5, we find Marco Bezzecchi, the top Aprilia, Alex Rins and Johan Zarco, Brad Binder, Enea Bastianini and Ayagura on road 6. From Raul Fernandez, Augusto Fernandez and Songkyak Chantra. Lorenzo Savadori completes your grid. And I guess for Fabio Quartararo then, he's got a decision to make. Does he bring that bike back to the grid, or does he come straight up pit lane and get switched over to the bike that he knows is in one piece, even if that risks starting from the back?
Something always happens in Austin, Texas, doesn't it? They say the motto of the city is keep it weird, but it's already been a weird start to this MotoGP build-up here, hasn't it? As riders look at wet Michelin tyres, they look at slick tyres. This was Marc Marquez on the wet rubber. Just saw Marquez come out of the garage very late on, didn't we?
Just had some Yamaha technicians race past us, past our commentary box window, which is on the entrance to the pit lane. So they're clearly expecting Fabio Quartararo to come up pit lane very shortly. It's going to be interesting to see if he gets in with enough time to switch over to the other bike and get that out of pit lane so he can take his place on the grid.
Well, Marc Marquez, he has been there. He's done it so many times in his career. This is Grand Prix start number 270, MotoGP start number 192, but he'll be feeling the nerves, he'll be feeling the butterflies. On board then with Fabio Quartararo with those badly scuffed leathers on the left-hand side. He's through turn 90, he's looking at himself on the big screen.
Yeah, do I go to the grid or do I put him to the pit lane? They're telling him, go to the grid, Fabio.
Crashing on the sighting lap then. Such a rare occurrence. Fabio Quartararo then will come to the grid. There's frantic radio communication going on between the factory Yamaha mechanics. Quartararo qualified in 11th place. He made a scintillating start to the sprint yesterday. If you watched on social media last night, his run up to the first corner, where he just came steamrolling through 11th to 4th, and then put up a great fight with the two VR46 Ducatis and Morbidelli and the Giannantonio. So bike on the grid, factory Yamaha on the grid. You saw there Fabio Quartararo rather hastily exiting. I guess he's going to probably have to go and get changed into a fresh set of leathers.
Not the kind of stress that you want, is it, with just over 15 minutes to go until the start of the race?
Yeah, this is his crew chief, isn't it, Diego Ghibolini? Are they just saying now, what do you want to do? Do you want to go with the reins or the slicks? Really high pressure situation, isn't it, right now? What about the prospects for the factory KTM riders? Pedro Acosta, he goes from 4th on the grid. Let's see what he can potentially do in this Grand Prix. Let's get the thoughts of his boss, Aki Iwa, Jack.
Aki, this is a nightmare for the riders and the teams alike as well. Pedro's come in and spoken to the team. What was his feedback and what conditions are like?
It's quite similar information from for our riders that especially T2, T3 is really wet at the moment. So at the moment, for sure, it's like let's say wet setup, wet tires. But okay, we have still more than 10 minutes here to change mind if something changed, but at the moment seems like we have still wet on the air, and it's more about wet side.
Looking at the weather radar as you guys do we expect this shower to pass, or it's going to stay for the duration of the race?
At least if we follow the forecast, is that should be over, but difficult to say how long it takes.
Thanks, Aki.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the thing, aren't they? They're trying to second guess the weather forecast and try and predict them as accurate as they possibly can. Of course, we just saw there, didn't we, factory KTM star Brad Binder. Let's not forget what happened at the Red Bull Ring in 2021, where Brad Binder prevailed on slick tyres on a soaked Red Bull Ring circuit in one of the most memorable flag-to-flag battles, one of the most memorable MotoGP races we've had in recent memory.
Let's head down to pit lane then and get a word from Pramac. We've already seen Jack Miller lending some assistance to Fabio Quartararo. What can he and Augusto Fernandez do this afternoon? Gino Borsois with Jack.
Yeah, I wanted to grab a word with Gino, because Jack, one of the only riders to go out on the wets, then swap to the slicks. Having spoken to him, what did he say?
No, well, no, we have rain right now, no slicks, so we decided to change the bike because the bike was already already on the garage with the rain tire on it. So at the moment we will keep like this. For I think it's also the decision of most of them. Let's see, it's not so rain condition of the track at the moment. I think it's not for wet, maybe for dry, but it's a really difficult choice.
These are Jack Miller conditions, right?
For sure, Jack Miller condition. We saw Miller on dry condition. On Friday it was so good, so fast. The feeling with the bike was perfect, so let's see if we can have a rain race.
Thanks, Gino.
Thank you.
Yeah, these are very much Jack Miller conditions as we get a special performance from the Houston Texan cheerleaders. Coming up shortly, of course, we will hear the Star Spangled Banner. While the cheerleaders are in red, is the podium going to be stained in red once again, as it so often has been? The factory Ducati squad are unbeaten since Marc Marquez won the Phillip Island Grand Prix in Australia last year, although America hasn't traditionally been a happy hunting ground for the Borgo Panigale factory. There's only ever been 2 MotoGP successes on American soil for Ducati in Grand Prix. Casey Stoner all the way back in 2007 at Laguna Seca, and most recently, of course, Enea Bastianini on the Gresini Ducati here a couple of years ago. Not enjoying the cheerleader show at the moment is Fabio Quartararo, because he's still inside the factory Yamaha garage.
We are used to seeing the colour red at the front of MotoGP grids nowadays. The more things change, the more things stay the same. But Fabio Quartararo there, I guess, telling Alex Rins what happened to him and just giving him the first-hand information as he now walks back towards the grid, now in a unscuffed set of leathers. And Fabio Quartararo, of course, a world champion. He's been through plenty in his career. He now just needs to block that out of his mind.
That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah. We're talking about the world's best riders in terms of talent, in terms of skill, in terms of just their mental power as well. But that crash will have jolted the confidence of Fabio Quartararo. That surely will condition how hard he attacks in the first part of this Grand Prix. Marc Marquez locked in very in-depth discussions here with his crew chief Marco Rigamonti. Davide Tardozzi, who looks very nervous, doesn't he, to Mark's left. The discussion's ongoing here. There is Gino Borsoi. He's having a chat with Pramac Yamaha boss Paolo Campinotti. Rider coach Fonzi Nieto was there, who's been out on circuit very recently. Well, we just saw him looking very nervous. I wonder how he's feeling as we're about, just over 10 minutes away from lights out for this COTA Grand Prix. What's the tyre choice, I wonder, for the factory Ducatis? Let's get it from the horse's mouth. Davide Tardozzi joins Jack.
Davide, we've just over 10 minutes to go. What's the plan right now for Mark and Pecco?
Yeah, in the end, both decide to go with rain tire because it seems that it's very slippery with the slicks, but I guess that it would be a flag-to-flag race.
Do you expect anyone to gamble and start on slicks?
Oh, pretty sure, yeah. I think that somebody from the bottom of the grid can take this risk, and I think that maybe could pay.
Thanks, Davide.
Yeah, will somebody further down the field decide to take the punt? You should have, as I mentioned, your eyes do get drawn to the likes of Johan Zarco, 15th place on the grid. I wonder whether Marco Bezzecchi will just feel like it's worth a punt as well. He's had a tough weekend on the factory Aprilia. At the back of his mind will be a off-throttle high side in the rain conditions on Friday morning at turn 5. Just trying to get himself composed now, Fabio Quartararo, who crashed on the slick tyres on the sighting lap.
It's almost in his interests now for the race to stay put, although I guess if he's brought the bike back that he crashed, they must be confident that they're going to fix that and get him out there, so he will still at least have a bike to switch to. But the only way we're going to get bike swaps in this race is if the conditions improve. There's Fabio Quartararo coming over and thanking Jack Miller, who's, I guess, got a role to play in Fabio starting this race from the grid.
I think Pramac Yamaha boss there, Paolo Campinotti, as well, instantly recognisable in the white shirt. I'm sure he's just said, don't worry, Fabio, we're going to send you the invoice, mate. We're going to send you the invoice. Well, we saw him go on the side lap on slick tyres, but is he going to go for the wets? Let's go down on the grid for a quick chat with Trackhouse Racing's Ayagura.
Aye, American team, American Grand Prix, but tricky conditions. We've seen you gamble on slicks before. Could today be the day to do it again?
Well, as you said, the condition is really tricky, and now in this condition, you can do cannot do so much. So yeah, just I will do what I can, and well, it's really difficult, but we'll see. Yeah.
Good luck, Ai.
Thank you.
Yeah, worst case scenario this really for Ayagura. Of course, limited experience on the Aprilia RSGP in the wet conditions, and he really struggled. He really suffered on Friday when it was full wet, and also when it was drying as well. So Marc Marquez poised to fire away from pole position for the 8th time here in COTA. Let's pause though for the American national anthem.
And now to sing our national anthem, Guinness World Record holder, world's youngest professional mariachi singer, Mario Lopez.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars to do the perilous fight? Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets reclaimed, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Wow, just wow. I think everybody here in Austin and watching all around the world has probably got the hairs on the back of their neck standing up after an absolutely perfect and beautiful rendition of the American national anthem by Matteo Lopez. What a pleasure it was to watch that young man.
Guinness World Record holder, the world's youngest mariachi singer. What a talent he is, and what a rendition that was of what is always a stirring national anthem whenever we hear the Star-Spangled Banner. Up-to-date information, by the way, from the grid, from Jack on the grid. 3 riders, as it stands at the moment, we believe, are going to start this race on slick tyres. At the moment, this, of course, could change in the next 3 or 4 minutes. They do still have time to change their mind. Ayagura, who we just heard from, Enea Bastianini and Brad Binder. So they start together on the 6th row of the grid. Binder 16th, Bastianini 17th, and Ayagura 18th. As it stands, they are the only 3 riders on this grid who are starting on dry tyres. Of course, the counter they have to sort of weigh up, the balancing act, is how much time you're going to lose on wet tyres in the latter part of the race if it does dry out, how much time you're going to lose on slicks in the first part of the race while the wets are still the preferred tyre. If they do feel it's going to cross over at some stage in this race, you've got to balance that out. Are you going to lose more time by running the wrong tyre for the first part of the race than you're going to lose by swapping bikes? Of course, it's going to take the best part of 40-45 seconds to change bikes, to come up pit lane on the speed limit, pull into your box and switch from one motorcycle to the other. The last time we saw a flag-to-flag race, I guess technically, was Misano last season, when Jorge Martin famously made the erroneous decision to swap from dries to wets. The rain then stopped and made him regret that decision. The last time we've had a Grand Prix where the race winner has switched bikes was also involving Jorge Martin. It was a race that he won, the Japanese Grand Prix at Motegi, late in 2023, when, of course, the vast majority of the field came in at the end of the very first lap to change from dry bikes to wet bikes. But the way we're sitting at the moment certainly doesn't feel as if this racetrack is ready for dry tyres, although, hey, Ayagura did go out there on the sighting lap on dry tyres, and if you think back to that Motegi weekend last season in the Moto2 class, Ayagura took that big, bold decision to start on dry tyres, a decision we thought was crazy. In the end, he was quids in and took a podium finish, which moved him closer to an eventual Moto2 championship.
Binder on the slicks. He's going for broke, isn't he, Brad Binder? I'm sure he's getting fond memories of Austria 2021 coming back to the forefront of his mind, and after what's been a pretty tough start so far in 2025 for the South African, well, you do feel like it probably is worth taking a big risk. Marc Marquez then with his special Speed Shop helmet here in Kota. Is he going to have too much speed for his rivals to handle here this afternoon? Ayagura, he is going for the soft front slick, soft rear slick. You can understand perhaps why the Japanese rookie has decided to gamble as well, because in the mixed conditions on Friday he really suffered. He found the going very, very difficult. Ayagura, he was 22nd and last in the full wet session on Friday morning. 14th fastest he was in those mixed conditions on Friday afternoon. Top ride again though by the 24-year-old in the sprint yesterday, having started way down in 18th place. A sprint which only saw one non-finisher, of course, with Juan Mir's crash. Maverick Vinales also retiring. Not too many non-finishers in that 10-lap sprint yesterday, and Agura came charging through from 18th to 9th place. Jorge Martin, well, you know that he would love to be out there getting the butterflies churning in his stomach, but sadly still sidelined from the serious pre-season injuries he picked up in the week before the Chang International Circuit. So just keeping a check on the 3 Aprilias, 4 Aprilias that are in this Grand Prix, of course. Ayagura, one of them on the slick tyres. Alex Marquez then, who has been second in all 3 sprints so far this season, second in both Grand Prix. He's on the front row of the grid. He is on the Michelin rain tyres. So is Fabio Di Gianantonio, firing away from his first front row since Qatar 2023. Well, he's already had 7 Kota wins in MotoGP here previously. Can he make it 8? Marc Marquez firing away from pole.